kind of watch your step on the mat here. So you don't trip. Positions. I'm gonna go ahead and look up on this side. That way you guys jumbo, you guys can see it like that. You don't have to pull up. Watch your feet as the couch is pulled out.
Okay, now they're picking it up. Yes. Okay, right. They're going to place it on the device. Description. Yeah. Thank you very much, Robert. You can return to your families. What about you? I have the family. I'll have a seat up front here, please. We are going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. Roberta Glickman. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in the silent mode at this time or turn it completely off. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Norman Lewison. And we do have some extra chairs, so you're welcome to come in and that's just for extra cushions.
I'm looking to see there is room here under the tent. Everybody should be included in being under the tent if you can. Although we do have a loudspeaker, so I don't have to project. I'm going to begin with a selection of the translation from the psalm that we read as we walked approaching the graveside. Dwelling in the shelter of the Most High, abiding in the shadow of the Almighty, I called the Lord my refuge and my fortress. I say, He is my God in whom I trust. Thus says the Lord, because you desire me, I will deliver you. I will save you because of your love for me. When you call to me, I will answer you. I will be with you in time of trouble. I will strengthen you and honor you. I will satisfy you with length of days. I will reveal to you my saving power. I want to point out a couple of the phrases in that psalm. It says, when you call to me, I will answer you. I will be with you in time of trouble. It doesn't say you're not going to have any trouble in your life. And Roberta had many, many challenges, but she always turned to God. And I think between God and God's representatives, her friends and family, she did indeed feel that she was always supported. And the other phrase is, In Hebrew, it's Orech Yamim. I will satisfy you with length of days. And she did live, given her challenges, a long life. But it doesn't say that. It says Orech Yamim, length of days. And she certainly filled her days with all kinds of activities, and most of all, with joy. Joy that she shared with the people around her. I am also going to share one other psalm, the traditional psalm that we say at times like this, the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Echsar, Bino Teshe Yarbitzeni, Almei Menachot Nachaleni. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. I'm going to call on Michael Glickman, her beloved brother-in-law, to speak on behalf of the family.
Thank you, Rabbi. And also thank you for your pearls of wisdom the other night when we were deciding what night or what day to do the funeral. He pointed out that yesterday was going to be 100 degrees and today was going to be much nicer. So for many reasons, I thank you. I'm basically a crier. So I cry at baby namings. I cry, as my kids know, at bar mitzvahs, at weddings, funerals, divorces. And I cry at commercials. So I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet so that I see if I can make through without crying. And actually short and sweet would be a nice way to describe Roberta. You know, she was not of height, but she was a very sweet lady. Roberta, for me, for those of you that remember and were sports fans in the 70s and 80s, there was something called sports phone. And you would call, the phone number was 976-1313, and it updated every 30 minutes, the scores and everything. Roberta, to me, was kind of my sports phone. I would call her, and she would be up to date on, the Cubs and who was pitching. She would give me in-game updates on it and who was pitching, who was hitting, and everything. And it was really, it was just one of those things that we kind of had together. But my sister and I have known Roberta for a long time. Roberta and my brother married in 1976, and I was fortunate enough to be the best man at the wedding. So watching Alan and Roberta, to me, was always amazing. They were what two people in a marriage should be. They would always be working together to make and get to the best outcome. It was so clear to me. A great example of that is occasionally they would travel to the National Federation of the Blind annual meeting, and it would be in Florida or wherever it was. They would always travel to it, and Alan would be in a wheelchair. For those of you that don't know, my brother had cerebral palsy, and Roberta would be with him, And on the rare occasion that I did have the opportunity to go with them, we're at the airport, and I think, I will push Alan in the wheelchair. And Alan was very clear that that's not what he wanted. He wanted Roberta to push him in the wheelchair. And I didn't think it was my place to let Alan know that Roberta was blind, and that it may not be a great idea. But I stayed quiet, and and together, Alan would say to Roberta, "Okay, Roberta, 50 more steps and turn right, and then 20 more steps and turn left." And they got through the airport. I mean, they just made it work, which was remarkable. But it also showed what I was talking before about how two people together really making the best of a situation. He really was her eyes, and she was his legs. And it was just remarkable to see them together. And also, over the last several years, Roberta's brother, Arnie, was a huge help, both with Alan and Roberta. And Arnie passed in 2019, and I became much more involved after that. And Roberta had the good fortune of first living after they moved out of their condo, and that was actually probably their proudest moment, was when they bought a condo. Alan and Roberta bought a condo 30 plus years ago, and that was such an accomplishment for them. But Roberta lived at Friedman Place for several years, and that was just a great place for her. It was a facility, independent living facility for people with impaired vision. And she was there until about a little over a year and a half ago, and where she just simply outgrew that, and she needed more help. She wasn't in an independent living situation. And for several months in between, while we were looking to find out where Roberta should live next, she lived with Harriet, and Harriet was a godsend in many ways. And then, after that, she ended up at Arbor Terrace in Highland Park. And, religion was very important. Even with her disabilities, she participated in many things at Arbor Terrace. She would always do bingo. She was the first blind person at Arbor Terrace, but as soon as she got there, they got Braille bingo cards so she could participate, and several times a week she played bingo. She would do exercises with the group every morning, always current events. And then her favorite thing each week was Shabbat. And she would do the Shabbat services at Friedman Place. And then she would, Harriet would always arrange for Friday night for her to be on the phone for Shabbat services with the temple. And then, again, Harriet would grab her and get her to Shabbat services on Saturday morning. And those were really the highlights of her life. So, thank you. I'm doing good right now. Anyway, so, she lived a full life. And even with all the disabilities, she made it work. So, for that, I'm very grateful. And also, thank you all for coming.
You almost made it through. And Harriet, who was in some sense the quintessential friend, will speak for the friends. That's you.
Yes, you.
Very quick with it.
Hi to everybody, and I'm going to let these other couple people join us. Thank you. Okay. When Roberta was growing up in the Albany Park area, Everyone is aware of her visual impairment now, but that wasn't a primary issue when she was growing up, actually. So she was able, while it was a birth problem, she was able to see, and it slowly deteriorated over time, but she made it through elementary school and high school with decreasing but vision. And so she was able to experience a lot of the world, especially Albany Park, at that time. And then she started junior college after high school for about a year or 6 months. And after that, she took a Braille course at junior college to learn to read Braille. This was such a benefit to her. Number one, she could read the elevator buttons, but more importantly, the Jewish Braille Institute, whatever it's called, sends out a monthly bulletin, news bulletin, which is a huge, thick book because of the Braille. But every month she got updated on the news for the month, and this was very important to her. And Michael always made sure that when she changed where she was, that the address got changed so she could get it, because this was an essential for her. She also, as part of that system, she also had a Braille calendar, which converted secular dates to Hebrew dates, Hebrew months and numbers and so on, for the lunar calendar. And because, I don't know about you all, I keep a record of everybody's birthday and whatever their yard sites and whatever. I keep a record that I can go look at. She kept it up here in her head for everybody, for her parents and her brother, all of blessed memory, for her brother-in-law and her sister-in-law and her nephews and the mishpacha, the spouse and the great nieces. And she kept especially good track of the great nieces and when their birthday was. And so we made a point of getting them going to Rosenblum's to get some books for her to be able to give to them. And her brother Arnie did several things for her in addition to just regular helping her, because Roberta had a kidney transplant. How many years ago? 2-3 decades more? 24 years ago. And the reason some people remember, because my memory's not so good, is on that day every month she appreciated the fact of having this kidney transplant, because she knew it was keeping her going. And every year anniversary, this was a mitzvah for her, because she again recognized how important this was for her. But at any rate, because of the kidney transplant, she had to take anti-rejection medications and a whole lot of other medications for various reasons, doesn't matter. But her brother made her a box with holes in it to set each medicine bottle in a different slot. So the box held about 9 different bottles or more, I don't know. She knew where each bottle was supposed to go, but not to worry. If it fell or something, she could open it up, feel the pill. She knew the name of the pill. She knew what it was for, and she knew when she was, and what dose it was, and when she was supposed to take it. No reading labels here. They didn't make Braille labels for the medicine bottles. How could she store all this stuff? I don't know, but she did. The other thing he did for her, getting back to the cards for the great nieces, since I did a little sidetrack here, getting back is the other thing he did for her was a card like an ID card, something like that. He cut out a 2-inch by 1/2-inch space in there so that she could feel. Feeling is what she could do. She made adaptations. She could feel where she could sign. So she signed in the hole in the card onto the whatever the paper was behind it. And sometimes I'd take her to doctor's appointments. Here, will you sign for her? She said, no, she'll sign for herself. And we set it up and she did it. And they're just flabbergasted. How can she do that when she can't see? Well, she adapted and managed. This was one special person, I have to tell you. One very, very special person. And I'm just checking my notes if you don't mind. Okay, well, when she was at Friedman Place, yes, she very much enjoyed the Braille activities and her one friend Ken, who's with his wife here, Eileen, reminded me in the car, Jeopardy. Jeopardy was a biggie. He loves Jeopardy. Roberta loves Jeopardy. Do not, everybody got instructions, do not call her from 3 to 4 any weekday because she's watching, in quotes, Jeopardy, which she could listen to. And the baseball games that she loved, she knew which station on the radio to find and what time and who's playing whom. And she always let me know, since I'm from St. Louis, when the Chicago team's playing the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay. But she kept track of all this stuff. And she also loved classical music, which her brother did also, and they shared that a lot with playing DVDs, CDs, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. To listen to the music, and she enjoyed that so much. And she knew who the composer was and what the piece was, and to me it's music, and it was like, how does she keep track of all this? And when she was moving up to Highland Park to Arbor Terrace, we had an interview with the staff, the director, and I don't know who all it was. They thought they had questions. Roberta had questions. Do you have bingo? Will you get Braille bingo cards? Otherwise, she was having none of it. But they did. The assistant director got the bingo cards right away, and she made a point of being at bingo twice a week. And sometimes we had to race back after services to get to be there in time for bingo. I just want to say she was such a special person. She loved her family, and this is her extended family, but that's her family, and so she was always glad to be together with them for Thanksgiving, Rosh Hashanah, whatever. The Seder, she usually came to our house, and one of the days of Rosh Hashanah. She wanted to experience Judaism as much as she could and do as much as she could. The mezuzah she wore on her chain around her neck, whenever she was feeling a little stressed, she held on to it. And that gave her strength. She appreciated the minions so much. She really appreciated, like, when she would have an aliyah, when the Torah came through and somebody would lean over so she could reach the Torah because she couldn't see where it was, but so somebody would, whoever's carrying the Torah would lean over for her to, when they go around the sanctuary, for her to reach it. And she was really pleased when she was able to be Galila, to wrap the Torah, Hillel very kindly kept it low down because she was a bit petite, and that way she could reach to get everything on it. But it gave her such pleasure, even opening and closing the ark that she did a couple times. This all gave her very much pleasure, and whenever we'd have Kiddush and people came over to say hello, she enjoyed that. So, okay. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you, Harry.
Okay, the one other thing is, one of the caregivers is here that helped her a lot, but all the caregivers at Friedman Place, she really appreciated all that they helped her, and also the caregivers at Arbor Terrace. Okay.
Thank you for sharing all of that. You mean you have another speaker? Alexander is going to speak.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm going to call on Alexander Brown, who's the executive director of Friedman Place, to share his particular view of her.
Hi, I'm Alexander Brown from Friedman Place, and we were blessed to have Roberta as a member of our community for several years. It's powerful and strange to be standing up here. Friedman Place was founded in 1935 as the Association for Jewish Blind, and about 50-ish years later started being known as the Kagan Home. And Roberta's mother was on the board of directors of Association for Jewish Blind, Kagan Home, for decades. I don't know how long, decades, and 3 decades. And then Roberta's brother, Arnie, joined the board when their mother died. And Arnie remained on the board when we became Friedman Place until shortly before he died. Roberta's family has been instrumental in our success. Roberta certainly was a very special, unique person. We, in our daily prayers, we express appreciation and gratitude many times. And through good days and hard days, there wasn't a single day that Roberta didn't point out the importance of appreciating and being grateful for small things and the big things. I never had an interaction with Roberta that did not involve a huge smile and a great laugh. And that impact, I think, certainly continues with me to stay focused on what's important and what's valuable, what's to be appreciated. And she touched so many lives, certainly, of our community, and for that we are very, very appreciative.
Thank you for that view too. And of course, it was a central part of her life for so many years. Karen, did you want to say a few words? Friend, Karen.
Roberta was very special to me, as was Arnie, because both of them recognized and appreciated my musical self, and we shared that. And when Roberta was at Friedman Place, she organized, with the help of Harriet, to have me play there once or twice a month for over a year. And so on a bi-month, so when I was there, Roberta made a big deal out of me and encouraged me in my performances. She was the first one in the hall. She was the first one in the row. She clapped vigorously, and she was, and then after the performance, I would coax Harriet. Well, how did it go? Ask Roberta. So Roberta would tell Harriet, who told me that she liked it very much. And this encouraged me, and in fact started me on what became something for me very special. And of course she had an infectious giggle, and she was, I prodded her constantly about her music, and we discussed WFMT, all the programs of which she knew by heart, and I knew many of them, so we shared that. And I just want to say that what's the most important thing to me with Arnie and Roberta is that they had in their souls, in their neshamas, both of them, music, a great deal of music, and joy and laughter and happiness, and were able to share that and impart that to those who were close to them, around them. May her memory be for a blessing.
Harriet is looking at me with some thought on her face. A short one.
The other thing, when Roberta was growing up, she said that her father, well, she and Arnie both went to Hebrew school, after-school Hebrew school. Her father studied with both of them to learn the prayers that get chanted in the service, and so that's how she learned them, so that in the service she was able to sing a whole lot of the prayers, and that enhanced her enjoyment.
I'll just eliminate about 2/3 of what I had to say, since it's already been said. Of course, a lot of what I would have to share would be what Michael and Harriet have already shared. But I also had the privilege to stand here when Arnie was being remembered, and so I got to learn a few things from Harriet. I'm sorry, from Roberta, because she was sharing about her brother. Roberta took great joy from life. And she lived a life that, as we all know, that would have overwhelmed a lesser person. She shared that joy with the people around her, with her joyous smile and her ready response to whoever spoke to her. She didn't give up on herself, her family, her friends, or the various communities of which she was a part. She and her brother Arnie were born in the Garfield Park area and lived there until they were in 5th and 6th grades. She was 15 months older than Arnie, and she remembered playing in the park and going to the Garfield Park Conservatory. That made a huge difference because she wasn't blind from birth. She could remember what the world was like. She did not lose her sight until she was about 10 or 11 years old. And she also, this hasn't been mentioned, I think, she also had scoliosis of the spine. And that problem stayed with her for the rest of her life. Their parents, Nathan and Esther Miller, moved the family north, and Roberta went to Roosevelt High School. And a lot of people know that was a great high school to go to in the days that she went. Arnie went to Lane Tech, and that was a great high school to go to in his day, and still is. Their mother's mother, took care of them while their mother was at work. The story is, and I'll just have to say, I got this from Michael, that she met Alan Glickman at a bowling party. He was on crutches and she was blind. I wonder who won. They went together for a few years and then got married in Evanston in November 1976. A very special marriage that lasted until Alan unfortunately died 9 years ago. Michael has spoken about how when Alan needed to use a wheelchair, we just heard that story, and when they would travel, that he would only let her push the wheelchair. And we've also heard how Braille opened the world for her, and knowing Hebrew Braille. And she worked for the Lighthouse for the Blind for many years. And she made a home for Alan and herself. And Michael also shared a story about how Alan had started out having, I don't know if people know about them, he had a newspaper stand. And unfortunately, some of the people in the neighborhood were not very appreciative of who he was and what he did. And they threw matches into the stand. And Bob Green, everyone here know who he was? He wrote a column for Forever. He wrote about him. And so he got to be somewhat known. So when Alan decided that he wasn't going to continue with this stand, with what was going on, he applied to CTA. And when he applied, the manager who he was speaking to knew who he was. Said, "Are you the guy that Bob Green wrote about?" And he said, "Yes." He says, "You have the job." And so he worked for the CTA the rest of his life, and he had the ideal job, of course. He could tell people where to go. Or at least he told them how to get there on the CTA. They lived on Roscoe until about 30 years ago when they bought a condo at 320 East Belmont. And Michael has shared how proud they were, how comfortable they were there, how much they loved living there. They were close with their families, her brother, Arnie, his brother and sister-in-law, Michael and Helene. She was a special aunt to Brian and Jeffery, now married to Haley, and this wonderful great aunt that we've heard about to Mia. Mia, is that how she pronounces it? Mia and Ellie. Roberta was fortunate to have received that kidney transplant that we heard about. And she learned, we also heard about, to manage the complex medications on her own. And we heard also about the history of the Miller seat on the board at the Home for the Jewish Blind. I will just add a personal note that I conducted the services at the High Holidays for many years there, together with my friend Herb Hartman, who was the cantor and not only conducted the High Holidays services, but conducted the Friday night services. And I will say that from what I understand, that whole dynasty took their job very seriously and continue to in contributing to what's now Friedman Place. And Roberta was accepted as a resident there after Arnie had helped her become independent in order to meet the requirements. As we talked about, it was an independent living home. Between Arnie, as long as he was able, Harriet, and Michael, her last years were made as good as possible, given her challenges. We heard about her love of the Cubs games, and she did live to see them win the World Series. She brought these, we all got to see when she brought these massive volumes at the High Holidays so that she could follow the prayers. The Shabbat prayers she knew by heart. But she also participated in the long services that we have at our congregation at Ner Tamid Ezra Habonim Egalitarian Minyan, which is now known as Matovu. And of course she came frequently until just now to the Shabbat services. She ended up in Arbor Place in Highland Park, where she was close to the family, and they did order those Braille cards so she could continue to play bingo. And that just made the place for her. She also had the support of the CNA Barbara Klein, but the real support of her life after Alan's passing were her brother, Arnie, whose memorial chair at what's now Matovu is titled in Braille as well as in English. And she got to read what it said. So it was Arnie and Harriet who not only took her where she needed to go, gave her support, but invited her to live in her home when she needed it for those times. And most recently, in such a tremendously devoted way, Michael. They were the unsung heroes of her life. I'm sure that there is now a reunion of the Glickmans and the Millers in a place where sight does not depend on your eyes. Yehi Zichra Baruch. May her memory continue to bless all of us who knew and loved her. and let us say,
Amen.
Al Makoma Tavo B'Shalom. May she come to her resting place in peace. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mavarach. The Lord has given, the Lord takes away, but in so many wonderful ways He doesn't. We have all these memories that have been shared here this morning. V'hu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchik v'hirbal lahashiv apo v'lo ya'ir kol chamato. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, O Lord, to those of us who remember and mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow, O merciful Father, our refuge and Redeemer. And let us say, I'm going to conclude with the El Male Rachamim and the Kaddish, and those of you who are comfortable are invited to stand. That's traditional with those prayers. Please, those who are more comfortable, remain seated. I don't have down her Hebrew name. Anybody know what her Hebrew name is?
Oh, yeah, it's just a second. Rochel got Esther Barrier. That's all I got.
Well, Rachel Chaya, but Esther Beria.
I don't have the father's name.
Okay. And Natan, her father Nathan. El Mole Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina B'Ma'alot Kadoshim U'Tohorim K'Zohar Rakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Rachel Chaya Bat Esther Beria V'Natan Shehalcha La'olama V'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana bal harachamim hastireha b'seiter kanafecha lo'olamim utzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai hunachlata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Rachel Chaya bat Esther Beria and Natan Roberta Glickman, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. We'll say together the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Yamlich malchutei. B'chayei chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. B'agala u'v'zman kari v'maru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam le'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitzoar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal. Shmei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'la min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechemata. Damiran b'yalma v'maru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'maru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael b'meru. Amen. May he who makes peace in the heavens bring peace also to the soul of Roberta, to her family and loving friends who mourn her loss, to the people Israel, and indeed to the whole world, which is so in need of that blessing of peace. And let us say, Amen. We will be lowering the casket now, and when the cover has been put on the grave liner, we'll invite whoever wishes to put in 3-foot shovelfuls of earth as the last of those things that we can do for Roberta's earthly remains. Are you going to? Yeah, you may be seated. You're going to announce about it.
As the rabbi mentioned, it will be able to place some earth into the grave once the cemetery gentlemen have placed the cover on. Following the service, the family would like to invite everybody to the Sarah's Brick Oven, 4032 Oakton Street in Skokie, immediately following the service. It's 4032 Oakton Street in Skokie, Sarah's Brick Oven. Thank you. Do you want to place this, Rabbi?
Sarah's Brick Oven, for those who may not be familiar with it, is right next to Hungarian.
Used to be Hungarian.
What used to be Hungarian is now Sarah's Tent.
Can we announce this?
Yes. There will also be a gathering, a memorial gathering, our kind of abbreviated Shiva, on Sunday at 1 o'clock at Matovu, from say about 1 to 3, to share memories, say Mincha, say the Kaddish. And what's the address of Matovu?
7315 Northwestern Avenue.
Okay, 7315 North Western Avenue. And everyone's invited to come. And if you get there at 1 o'clock or close to it, I hope you will, you can participate in the minyan for Mincha. Also, I'm going to invite Michael to put in this earth from the land of Israel when the cover's on the grave. Or actually, you can put it into the grave now. And, you know, there's the tradition that we would all like to be buried in the land of Israel, and this is how we do it. And so I don't understand why there still is a Mount of Olives, but this is earth from the Mount of Olives so that she can indeed fulfill that expectation. I want to share that I had a chance to look at the grave marker, the gravestone, and it already has everything engraved in it, Alan's name and dates, and her name and one date, and is just waiting this final date. And when you come up, you'll probably be able to see that here are her parents are buried right next to them. Please be very careful approaching the grave. The sides are not that steady.
Somewhere over here. Just a roll. Must not have been able to. I don't in the days I was working. I often was able to get off
There are 2 shovels, and if anybody wants to participate, you can just come up and help us cover the grave. Oh, mostly in good. Keep her out front. Oh, in the back. Okay. Yeah. But you still have them. I still have the house.
And it's cooler today too.
Right. And the carts in the back. In the garage, there are steps. I remember that from my mother's house. So your that building has it too. Yeah. 2 steps up, 2 steps down.
And you get and walk around trying to find the elevator. Which takes so long, most people walk.
That's what makes them go around the other side. Friends, also, there's a register book over to my right if you want to take a moment to sign. Thank you.
And she would tell me, oh, that's for you to get it. She'd do everything. I don't know how she did it. She'd tell me. Just amazing. But I know they
I'm glad you mentioned the books because my girls, especially my older one, my younger one, they asked for what they know.
Oh, I'm glad.
both of you.
We tried to find what good for them and that would be special for them. And at least we have some photos too.
Oh, for sure. That was always what we were shooting the books and then we would take pictures.
Yeah.
So we have, they have plenty of pictures to look at.
To remember.
Yeah, because my older one, my younger one is 3 years old. I don't know.
They remember when you keep talking to them.
Well, and they'll have all those books to read.
The books and pictures for sure.